Florida has had mail-in votes, a caller told me this the other day, for decades. But only about 30,000, 50,000 people use the mail-in vote. So what would happen now? Millions of people would use the mail-in vote. So let's put aside all the fraud associated with that. The idea that the Postal Service is going to be able to figure this out, that's quite a joke. They've already said, you know, we need 2 weeks, 15 days. And then you have Nevada all of a sudden the other night with the Democrat governor, the Democrat lieutenant governor, going around the Republican Secretary of State who's in charge of the election process to the Democrat legislature to pass emergency legislation to allow full-scale mail-in voting, among other things. The Democrats are really pushing this and embracing this. If it helps Republicans, why would they do that? To collapse the voting system. That's what they're going to do. They have laid the foundation that Trump doesn't want to leave the White House. They'll have to send in the U.S. Marshals or the military to get him out, when Trump never said any such thing. Trump was asked if he would accept the results of the election. He said, it depends. It depends, you know, what's going on and so forth. And we know exactly what he meant by that. He didn't say he wouldn't leave. He didn't say he wouldn't accept ultimately the results of an election. Biden's hired 600 litigators, 600 lawyers, litigators already. They're pushing the mail-in balloting. We already know it's a disaster. To have these reporters say, do you have any proof? There's overwhelming proof. California's overwhelming proof. New York, a congressional district recently, is overwhelming proof. A federal court ordering ballots counted that weren't even signed and they weren't dated right. That's proof. We can go proof into New Jersey and what happened there, 10,000 ballots missing. Over and over and over and over again. We know what a disaster this is. The post office is a disaster. The voting lists are a disaster. So the post office said maybe they'll be off 3 to 4%. 3 to 4%, typically about 130 million people vote. That means you're off by a factor of 4, 5, 6 million. And depending on what battleground states a lot of that occurs in, that's a big problem. So what's going to happen? You're going to wind up in court. You're going to wind up in court. And what court are you going to wind up in? This is what people don't understand. You don't go to federal court right away. You have to litigate in state courts, like they did in Florida. Remember that in 2000? And so what will happen, because they have experience with this, the Gore team, the Biden team will cherry-pick judges in state courts. Then that'll work its way to the Supreme Court of the state. Some of these battleground states, the Supreme Courts are awful. Pennsylvania has a left-wing Democrat Supreme Court, as an example. Only takes one state to swing the vote for Joe Biden, and it's over. One battleground state. This is why Trump has said, oh, well, we'll see about the results of the election. He didn't say he wouldn't leave. He said, we'll see about the results of the election. And so the more chaos there is, Cloward and Piven, the more the Democrats are able to empower themselves. They've laid the foundation that Trump is a dictator, that Trump won't leave office. And, of course, they've laid the foundation that he won't accept the results of the election. Now, what else about Cloward and Piven? What's happening is the Democrats are plotting and scheming, and then they will blame the victim. They will blame the president and the Republicans for the outcome that they're creating. You saw that with Russia collusion. The party that colludes with the Russians all the time, or the Chinese, is the Democrat Party. But they turned it that there was Russia collusion with Trump, and they started it early on. Now, we know there was no evidence. We know there wasn't a single senior official testifying under oath behind closed doors who believed there was Russia collusion. Yet the FBI intelligence agencies were used. The Democrat Party media was used on Russia collusion. What is that? They plot, they create the false or fraudulent narrative, and they accuse their target. So now we have Cloward and Piven overload the system, and who else do we have? Saul Alinsky. Saul Alinsky, those are Alinsky tactics, all Marxists, by the way, Americanizing Marxism. So now Trump is the dictator. Trump is the one who's trying to create anarchy. Trump is the one who won't accept the results of the election, when in fact, it's the Democrats who are creating the anarchy, who are plotting to do all this, and then blame Trump. And they have the Democrat Party media behind them every step of the way. They have Hollywood behind them. They have sports leagues and athletes behind them. In other words, the culture pushing the same agenda.